Hi, welcome to ThinkJunos Tips and Tricks Episode 1. In this series, I'm going to go through some of the CLI features. I wouldn't say they're hidden commands, but they're commands you may not be familiar with, and just some additional little tricks you can use when you're on a Junos device to make your life a little easier. So the first one I want to show you is something that will keep you from having to go back to the online documents or Google as much as possible, and that's the built-in help commands. So when you're at your operational mode prompt, you can type help, and then you have a bunch of options with help. And I think the first one we should show you is the topic. So if you do topic, it's going to break down a bunch of the built-in protocols and available features in Junos. So let's say we want to know how to configure spanning tree. Very common configuration for a layer 2 switch, some form of spanning tree. So let's say help topic STP and then question mark. Now, once you get into the topic of spanning tree, there's a bunch of other commands you will have to configure. So let's say what we want to figure out with spanning tree is the cost. Can be an important setting. And then what we want to do, we're going to run cost. So what happens here is this pulls in effectively the man page for the spanning tree cost configuration, and this will go through and give you a bunch of information about what the cost is, how it works, how it's configured, the numbers behind it, and then some example configuration kind of at the bottom here. So that's very handy. You can run this in operational mode or configuration mode. The command you're going to do is help topic, the topic you want, and then the feature of that topic. So that's great for looking up stuff. The other one I want to show you is reference. So we'll do the same thing, help, reference, a bunch of options here for what we want to do. We're going to do spanning tree again, and we'll do cost. Now you notice reference doesn't really tell you the background of what the cost feature is, but it does go through and shows you some of the the hierarchies of where it sits and some of the reference information around it. If we come back down here a little bit further, it's going to give a description of it. It's going to talk about the range of cost and some of the configuration guidelines to it. So this is going to be very handy. Obviously, spanning tree cost is not the most complex thing, but for more complex features inside, IP routing or layer 2 switching or multicast, this can be very handy. The next thing I want to show you gets away from the help, but we're going to show you how to set a handy feature built into the operational mode for setting the timeout of the root user. So let's say somebody logs into root and they just forget to log out. There is a default timer, but you can set that to be lower. And this is one of the few set commands that can actually function inside the operational mode. So we're going to type set, we're going to type question mark, and this is set CLI. And it's set CLI idle timeout. Okay. Now this says the maximum time for idle that we want to do for a root login only. Okay, so set CLI idle timeout. I'm going to say 5 minutes. So this is going to say if I sit here at this prompt for 5 minutes, it's going to automatically log me out and make me log in. We're not going to sit around and watch that, but that is a handy configuration. The other one I want to show you is set CLI, and this is screen width. Screen width and screen length. This can be handy if you're trying to put this into a smaller browser or smaller terminal session and you just want to control what's coming up. Sometimes I use the screen length when I put two windows on top of each other and I want to be able to run commands on both, but I want to have the output come out to the same. So you can say something like screen length default, I believe, well, I'm not sure, but let's say screen length 20. Now if we do show configuration, you'll notice it only outputs 20 lines at a time. So just another feature you can use there for that. So that is set CLI and then some other commands in there. All right, the next thing I want to show you for this feature is going back to the pipe and the display, right? So we can do show configuration, pipe, display, and we have a bunch of options here. XML is one if you want to see the XML configurations about it. If you want to see the set mode, you can see the configuration in the commands you would use to configure that with the set commands. But the one I want to show you is also detail. Now detail is interesting, and you can use it in a bunch of different areas. So display detail, what happens when you do show configuration display detail is it hashes out all of kind of the remarks for every single line of the configuration. Now this can be handy for if you're just parsing configuration you're not used to, or there's some other stuff in the configuration you just don't know what that is and you want to learn it. You can do as a display detail, and it'll break down kind of what every component is. So if we go through here, let's find one that maybe doesn't make a ton of sense, but you want to learn a little bit more about it. And I think syslog can fit that because there's a lot of regex stuff there. So if we look at syslog, we say that syslog system in the remark section, syslog system logging facility. Okay, it's pretty clear. Requires system. That's saying it's in the system subsection. And then under syslog, we have the name of the user to notify. And then the regex match. So those are the remarks for the next section below. So we're saying at the bottom there, we're saying the name of the user is user, and then the matching regex expressions to be used. So this will just help you kind of break down the configuration with remarks, with the default remarks in there to kind of help you view what's going on. All right, the next thing I want to show you is if you're in the configuration mode, you can also use the display detail, and sometimes I do that when I do a commit. Commit display, right? Detail. What happens here is this will show you everything that's executing. Now on this switch, I don't really have anything beyond the basics, so it's only executing the standard commit process. But if you are running extra commit scripts or any other type of scripts that run when commit executes, this can show you what's going on when they're happening. So just another way of kind of following the process of what's going on there. All right, so those are the 3 tips for today. The help commands, the set CLI, and then the display detail. So use these when you're working on Junos boxes, and hope this helps you out. Thanks a lot.